Welcome. Good evening. Please, if you're in the hallway, come on in, have a seat. Sit down, get comfortable. All right, welcome. My name is Patty Hamaguchi, and I'm your moderator for tonight, as well as a member of the League of Women Voters of Litchfield County. We are hosting this event. First of all, I want to thank you all for taking your time out of your very, very busy lives to come here and listen to information that will be shared by the two candidates for this evening's forum, Mr. Joseph Canino and Ms. Michelle. This will be the last time you will be clapping because I will be talking to you about the rules for tonight's forum in case you apparently didn't read the information up there. So hold your applause and just listen for a few minutes. So as some of you know, the League is a nonpartisan organization and was founded in 1920, the year most women voted for their first elections. One of the most important functions of our organization is to promote an informed citizenry and to encourage people to vote for the candidates of their choice. So again, thank you for doing your part to support the democratic process here in Connecticut. So tonight's candidates are running for the office of state representative for the 65th district, which includes much of the city of Torrington, where we are right now. Much appreciation for this evening goes to Torrington High School for allowing us to use this space, to our timers, Marie and Costa, and for the members of the League of Women Voters of Litchfield County who assisted in developing the questions for the candidates that were submitted previously online as well as this evening. And last but not least, to Denise Butwill for all she has done as president of our local chapter to organize this event. All right. Thank you also for the candidates for stepping up to run for office. We recognize that running for office and holding public office is a huge commitment of your time, which can be very rewarding, but also filled with stress and sacrifice that many people will never know and never see. Without the willingness of these candidates to dedicate the next 2 years of their lives to work on your behalf in Hartford, the state government would not be able to function. So please know, Ms. Cook and Mr. Canino, that your participation in this election is much appreciated by all of us here tonight. Something that not all candidates in all races are willing to do at times, and it speaks very well of your willingness to share your ideas and goals with our audience so they can make an informed decision about their voting choices. So there are some guidelines that we follow to allow each candidate to express their view and to facilitate sharing ideas. And just as importantly, there are also important guidelines for you, members of the audience. As you're already aware, as audience members, you're not allowed to wear or bring any clothing or signs or have any sort of indication of which candidate or party you support. You must hold your applause. No comments, no remarks, no shouting, no signs, no gestures, no whistling, nothing until the end of the debate, please. You can do that, right? Can everybody agree that they will do that, please? I need a yes, a loud yes. Yes. All right, I'm going to hold you to it. All right, thank you. If someone is not able to abide by these rules, you will have to leave. And of course, we don't want to do that. Lastly, there's no recording allowed other than the recording we are making of the complete debate. So no audio or video recording of the debate by anyone in the audience. The order of questions has been determined ahead of time, and neither candidate has been given these questions in advance. We cannot guarantee that your question will be used. There may be similar questions or too many questions. There's at this point about 35. So we will be prioritizing them. We will do our best to cover as many topics as we can. Every question will be posed to both candidates and needs to pertain to issues that are relevant to state government services, policies, and programs. The format of this debate is called a cumulative time debate, meaning both candidates have the same total amount of time to speak, for up to 30 minutes total. We have timekeepers who will be keeping track of each candidate's total number of minutes as the forum proceeds, and the candidates will be able to see those numbers as they go. The candidate can therefore answer for any number of minutes they would like for any given question, but it will be deducted from their cumulative total. There is no interrupting and no foul language, no personal attacks allowed. Tonight is going to be a civil, courteous exchange of information, and we need everybody to cooperate. So that's the ground rules for tonight. And with that, we're going to start with the very first question. And we drew names out of a hat, and Mr. Canino drew first. So I'm going to start with him. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and why you were running for this position?
Thank you, Pat. Thank you, Patty, for the question. And first off, I just want to thank everybody for coming here today. It's great that we get to do this and have some nice democratic discussions.
Can everyone hear him?
No. Mic's not on.
Hello.
Turn on your mic, maybe.
Oh, right on. Just on the mic.
Hello. Hello. All right. Start over. Thank you again, everybody, for coming out today.
Start the time now.
Yes. My name is Joe Canino. I'm 27 years old, and I'm born right here in Torrington, Connecticut. Born and raised in this great city, and I'm running because the state of Connecticut is unaffordable. Under Democrat rule over the past 30 years in the legislature here, we have not seen the costs go down. We have seen a state and local tax burden that is the second worst in the nation. And I ran because I want to do something about that. I'm not going to sit up here and try to pay you off with your own tax dollars. I don't want to promise you everything in the world. What I want to promise you is that I will work my tail off to make sure that Connecticut becomes more affordable. You know, as a resident of this state my entire life, I have seen the cost of everything go from groceries to electricity to, you know, gas, everything. I will vow to you that it will be my #1 priority to make sure that the cost of everyday goods in this state goes down. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Canino and Ms. Cook.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for being here. First, I would like to thank the league, the high school, the voters that are here, and especially my family, who I know over the last several years have really put up with an awful lot. My name is Michelle Cook. I'm currently the state representative for the 65th district, which is Torrington. I'm proud to have that position. I'm a mother of 4, a grandmother of 3. I am also a proud wife of an educator. I have been a preschool teacher, a counselor. I have been a counselor for unwed pregnant teenagers, and many, many other things. But at the end of the day, first and foremost, I'm somebody that's dedicated to my community. I moved here in the early 90s, met my husband, raised our family right up the street. All 4 of them are public high school, Torrington Public High School graduates. I'm a graduate of Missouri Baptist University. I have half of my master's in special education from Central Connecticut State University. And the reason why I'm running for re-election is this. Over the last several years, we've seen a lot of things. We've seen a great recession. We've seen a global pandemic. We've seen hits on our democracy. We've seen changes in our society. We've seen that the deep value of our elderly has risen, and the importance of our children has not stayed on the forefront. So for me, it's really trying to go back to the State House and doing the one thing that I believe that I've been doing very well over the last 16 years, and that's fighting for everybody in the city of Torrington and the state of Connecticut. We might not all agree on everything, but I do know that there's one thing that nobody can dispute, and that's when I take this office, I do it full-time, every day, all day, and I'd be honored to do it for 2 more years. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. And audience, you're doing great. Just saying. Keep it up. Love it. All right, #2. There are many misconceptions about the role of a state representative in terms of what you can do in part of that position. Can you tell us a little bit about what a state representative can do and what they cannot do within their role as state rep? And how do you envision your role and priorities? And this is going to go to Ms. Cook, so we're going to keep alternating So she will answer this question first, and then Mr. Canino. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. So the role of state representative, contrary to what everybody believes, there are several things that we can do and then several that we can't. First and foremost is we can be your voice and your advocate at the State House. A lot of times folks don't believe that they have somebody that they can pick up the phone and call. They don't know who can take care of what. We are able to advocate for healthcare. We're able to advocate for your education. Senior citizens call us quite a bit, veterans. We're also the go-between between local and federal government. So if there's something that is federally related, we are the pass-through for that. And if there's something that is city-related, we are the pass-through for that as well. So we're kind of the keeper of all things in the middle. But the other thing that we do is we ensure that you have state funding down to your municipalities. What that means is you have educational money, you have money for your nonprofits, you have money for healthcare, you have money for roads. There are so many different things that the state representative does. And the other thing that people might not realize too is technically a part-time legislature. So we are in office from January to June on the budgetary cycle and February to May on the non-budgetary cycle. But that doesn't mean that you stop working when those days are done. I took this job as a full-time job and I do that full-time. And so at the end of the day, what that means is people can call my office and call my house any time of the day or night. And we will make sure that we help them in any way, shape, or form. And if we do not have the answers, we make sure that we find the right person to get the answers.
Thank you. And Mr. Canino.
Yeah, my opponent summarized a decent amount of what a state representative does, but there's just a couple of things that I want to touch on. You know, as a state representative, you're the person that people call when their services get cut off and they need that connection to their state agencies to help them resume their benefits. That's something that I look forward to being as your state representative. But yes, the primary responsibility as a legislator is voting on policy and presenting policy that will change the state of Connecticut, hopefully for the better. And as your state representative, you have my word that I will do nothing but promote policy that makes the state more affordable, lowers taxes, supports our police, and makes Connecticut safer.
Thank you. The next question is on affordable housing. Short-term rentals are popular in the Northwest Connecticut area and are adding to the shortage of housing for full-time residents. Do you have thoughts on how we can return some of these short-term rental properties to the housing market? And this is going to start with Mr. Canino.
Thank you. I think it is very evident here in Connecticut that we need more housing across the board. We have a very low supply of housing, which due to supply and demand laws means that it becomes more expensive. Part of that issue is that we have 169 municipalities in this state that unfortunately have very different zoning laws. It is very difficult to navigate them. And then once a developer actually decides to invest in this state, they can face a myriad of lawsuits which delay the problem, or which delay the litigation, puts a lot of costs on the developers, and they simply don't want to go through all those hoops. I believe if we have a freer market here in Connecticut for housing, the price of housing will go down. The other issue is some labor regulations that the state of Connecticut mandates on our employers. You see things like just this year, the state legislature passed a mandatory 40 hours per employee paid sick leave in this state. And while sick leave is great, and many employers already in the state already try and provide it, it's things like these that make businesses not want to come here. If you're a small business with 10 employees, that's 400 hours of free labor that you now are required by the state to provide to your employees. These are the things that make construction companies, developers think twice about coming here to Connecticut. So I think if we get government out of housing rather than putting more government into housing, we will get to a place where housing is affordable and is quality here in Connecticut.
Thank you, Mr. Canino. Ms. Cook?
Thank you for the question. I'm glad that my opponent brought up the sick days. I actually voted no on the expansion of paid sick days this year, recognizing that it was a burden on a lot of our small businesses and our taxpayers. So for me, the affordable housing is a combination of a variety of things. And we have an aging infrastructure that has not been updated and maintained for decades. And that's for a variety of different reasons. I do agree that we need to streamline our processes and make it easier for building trades and other folks to do their great work. And I'm honored to be able to have the endorsement of the building trades and the engineers to ensure that they know that I work for them. The other issues that we have, when we talk about short-term rentals, during the pandemic, what we ended up having was a ton of outside people out of the state of Connecticut that came in and bought our infrastructure and our homes. What that did was truly jack up our rates. And if we do not have some type of oversight on what happens, we have exactly what we have right now. We have truly outpriced our infrastructure and the folks that want to live here. There is nobody in this room under the age of 30 that should have to pay $350,000 to live in a home, a starter home. And that's what's happening today. There's nobody here under the age of 30, unless you have an amazing job, that could probably afford that. And so how do we do that? And what do we do with that? We ensure that we have incentives for that. We ensure we have rebates and rental programs and otherwise. The other thing that we need to do is work with our landlords. And I've been honored to meet a good amount of our landlords, but when we talk about that population and affordable housing and short-term rentals, the people that I think about the most is our seniors. And time again, seniors call my office and say, my landlord just doubled and tripled my rent. I'm gonna be homeless in a month. I'm gonna have to live out of my car. There's no place for me to go. What can we do? And so I believe that we need to bring everybody back to the table and figure out how we can work together to ensure that the landlords deserve the fair rent that they get, but also the tenants deserve what they can afford. Because at the end of the day, and especially for my seniors and my veterans, being homeless is just not an acceptable practice for me.
Thank you, Ms. Cook. And this question will go to you again. It's somewhat related, but how do you plan on tackling the homeless issue here in Torrington?
That's a difficult question. Because I think there's a variety of different ways to answer it, but I don't think that there's a one-stop shop solution. Especially for those folks that choose to be homeless. And, you know, if there's people in the audience that don't realize that, or people watching, there are people that choose to live homeless. They just do not want to be bothered, and that's their choice and their way of life. And far be it for us to, kind of interfere in what they choose. We also have a couple of other different issues. One I just discussed, and that's when somebody jacks somebody's rents so high that they can't afford it. We also need to make sure that we give back to those communities. So I was on the 10-year program to end homelessness here in Torrington. And there were a lot of strides made. We've done the roundtable conversations. We've brought all of our nonprofits together. We've reached out to people in the woods. We've done a variety of different things, but what we need that temporary housing for people to get back on their feet. And what I envision would be this. Let's find a whole bunch of little homes and put people together in an area where they can have all of the wraparound services that they need. And they're not too far from the soup kitchen or a food bank, but we ensure that they have the social workers, the medical attention, Social Security, anything and all of the services that they need in one area without discrimination and judgment. Because we don't know what somebody else is going through. And I can tell you that the amount of homeless people that have been in this school are young people that are homeless. Contrary to what we might believe, not everybody has a nice home life. Not everybody has two parents and a roof over their head. So we have got to figure out a way to make sure that those children as well have the ability to have shelter, because right now homeless shelters do not take anybody 18 and under. So I think it's the continued work. We do have incredible groups that work on this specifically, and so many others that we need to bring back to the table. But remember that it needs to be judgment-free and figure out a way to walk into it, to try to serve the people that want to be served, and then to also honor the respects of others that don't.
Thank you. Mr. Canino.
Yeah, I find it very hard to believe that there's anyone in this town that wants to be homeless. I think there are many people who feel like it is an insurmountable task to gain the requisite skills and lifestyle behaviors to be able to support themselves and house themselves. As we all know, mental health and addiction are two of the biggest drivers of homelessness here in Connecticut. And, it doesn't help that we're one of the least affordable states in the country to live in. That definitely contributes to the homeless situation. And what contributes to that lack of affordability are the three major tax increases that we passed in this state in 2011, 2015, and 2019, all three of which my opponent, unfortunately, supported. expanding taxes on everything from digital downloads to parking, prepared foods, smoking cessation, cigarettes, alcohol, car washes, rideshare services, interior design, diesel fuel. The list goes on and on. They expanded the sales tax to 6.35, raised the corporate surcharge tax, and raised the marginal rates of the state income tax. This makes it unaffordable to live in Connecticut, and it is unfortunate that my opponent supported those things. It is so expensive to live here. I really think that we do need to make more investments for the homeless population. I think, like my opponent said, we need to be providing those wraparound services to ensure that not only once we get them housing, that they are able to keep that housing and also keep the jobs that will then support that housing. But unfortunately, our state government has not prioritized that. Just this year, we had a bill that reallocated ARPA funds that could have been spent on some great core services to higher education. We went and bailed out our bloated black hole of state higher education here in Connecticut, when I feel like we could have prioritized some better things, namely maybe homeless or energy rates that everybody in this room, what Democrat, Republican, or Independent, are feeling right now.
Thank you. Well, when I ask this question, you
Sure.
say whatever you like. But this one actually will be starting with Mr. Canino. This question is, Torrington students with severe special needs often have to be bused significant distances from their home school in order to receive the services they need. This is not fair to the students and costs the school district a considerable sum. How would you, as a state representative, help provide the funding the schools need for these services, as well as provide incentives and increased reimbursements for speech OT therapy practices who cannot afford to take on Husky-insured children?
One of the best meetings that I had on this campaign journey was with Torrington area families for autism. And they are in desperate need of a new space to handle the increasing IDD population, not only here in Torrington, but in the northwest corner. They do some great work, and they just need a little bit more space and some help with resources to handle this population up here that is in desperate need of services and that frankly thrive under the outplacement that they provide. So as your state representative, I would go straight to the budget committees and say, listen, Torrington is the only city in the northwest corner. We are a hub for so many services. If we fail, the rest of this area fails. And we need direct investments in services for the IDD community here in Torrington.
Thank you, Mr. Canino. Ms. Cook.
Thank you for the question. I'm going to answer the first one first and then piggyback on the last one. So I think it's vitally important that everyone knows here that we've increased our spending on special education by $40 million a year for the last several years. Special education for me is one of my top priorities. And I'm going to embarrass my son, so I'm sorry while you're sitting in the audience, but I will explain it here. So 4 of my children, one of them has dyslexia. They graduated from here. Nobody here in Torrington Public Schools was trained or certified to teach somebody with dyslexia. That's one of numerous special education difficulties for people. And if you don't understand it, then you don't know how to teach somebody. So time and time again, over and over and over again, it was a fight and a battle and a fight and a battle to get the services that he needed. I'm proud to say that he graduated from here, graduated from college, and finished his MBA this year. And that is extremely important for me, because if they would have listened to some of my folks that were here, he would have not gone to college, because they didn't understand what that meant. What that meant was somebody with autism and somebody with dyslexia, your IQ doesn't disqualify you for services. We didn't have the money to train people. So what did I do for that population? It's taken 16 years, but over those 16 years, we've changed the laws for dyslexia, we've changed the programs, and we've also created the Office of Dyslexia. That is just one population that we've done incredible work for. What we've done, we've ensured that our school districts can turn around and combine those services. Yes, I totally agree that TAFTA is an organization that is incredible, and they are doing amazing work. And I have been with them since before they were a founded organization. We need to do more. And the state recognizes that. And as sitting on the education committee for the last 16 years, that is one thing that we've been continuing to do over and over and over again. We're fixing educational funding and fixing special education funding at the same time. And a few years back, I was a part of a MORE task force. And it was so important for me for special education that I ended in S. So instead of MORE, it was MORES. And that included special education. And what that did was that audited every special ed program across the state of Connecticut to ensure that the accountability was there. And what did we find? Millions upon millions of dollars in misallocated spending or inappropriate spending. So what did we do? We held them accountable. We take that money and redirect it back to where the money goes, where it should go, and that's to our students. Should we regionalize some of those services? I'm a firm believer that if we share those services for special education, we could get a bigger bang for our buck. We also have to recognize that parents and students have rights, and we need to meet them where they are. I think that our system has become so much better than where we were 10 or 15 or even 20 years ago, but we do have so much more work to do. I want to go back to the question on budgeting, housing and affordability. My opponent is right. I did vote for those three budgets. I voted for those three budgets. One of those, we were in the middle of a huge recession and trying to figure out how to make ends meet. And there are some difficult decisions that are being made. It's very easy to say you did this and you did this until you're sitting at the table and you have to decide who you're cutting from who. So do you cut money from education or do you cut money from the veteran? Do you cut money from the roads or do you cut money from your seniors? Or wait a minute, do you cut money from your nursing homes or the reimbursements? So you have to offset what that means. And it'd be very easy if we could take each and every line in a budget and decide, all right, I'm going to cut that word and I'm going to cut that word. But at the end of the day, we have had some very troubling times. And there's been some very difficult decisions that have been made. But over the last couple of years, we've made some awesome decisions. And what we did the two largest tax cuts in the state of Connecticut. The first year we cut $400 million. The second year we cut $600 million. That's over $1 billion in tax cuts. That's 95% of the Torrington population that received those cuts right back into your pocket. It might not be the best thing early and on time and right now, but at the end of the day, we are making strides to catch up with some of the decisions that we had to make to ensure that Connecticut didn't go dark.
Thank you. Next question will be started with Ms. Cook. Do you have confidence that the Secretary of State and our election process here in Connecticut is a secure one? And would you attest and certify the results of our state election process regardless of the outcome of your party's candidate?
Yes. Look, I know there's a hit on our democracy. We've taken legislation in ensuring that foreign nationals cannot interfere in our election. We've taken protections to ensure that there's cameras watching our polling places. And let me thank all of those who work the polls. I know that is a grueling job. And I've talked to voters that are afraid to go to the polls this year. I'm proud to say that we've expanded early voting to ensure that people don't have to be locked in to vote on one day, because we don't live in the day of riding your horse to the center of town, everything shuts down, and you vote that day. Am I confident in my government and I'm confident in my Secretary of State? Absolutely. I don't think that anybody takes this position or that position with the intention of having a crooked government or a criminal type system. I know the Secretary of State personally. I think she's been doing a good job. And I think that she is dedicated and committed to ensuring that we have fair, clean, and honest elections. And at the end of the day, I am never one to turn around and complain on whether or not my election results were good or bad. The voters vote, the results are the results, and of course, I would trust that.
Thank you. Mr. Canino.
Just want to go back to a couple of things that were mentioned by my opponent. It is a little troubling to me that the response to, we were in a recession, so we decided to raise taxes to make things less affordable. Those are these things that I just laid out are the things that hurt people the worst. The sales tax is one of the most regressive taxes that we have. And expanding that in 2011 at a time where so many families were struggling, to me, it seems like you could have done a better job. And my opponent in 2011, after that vote, was quoted in the Register Citizen saying, well, I don't believe that this will impact the constituents that I represent. not a proper response. I think everybody here is feeling the impacts of those actions there, and it's very unfortunate. In terms of making investments on education, this recent ARPA bill that we had ended up, like I said before, taking a bunch of money that was already allocated and shifting a great portion of it to our higher education institutions. One interesting statistic I saw, we spend $23,000 per UConn student in the state. We subsidize $17,000 for every state college's student, but we only spend $5,000 statewide per student at the K through 12 level. Again, budgeting is about priorities, and I think my opponent would be one of the first to acknowledge that the earlier we spend money in a child's life, the better dividends it's going to pay later on. Instead of subsidizing the very costly, bureaucratic higher education system here in Connecticut, we can instead funnel more money where it's much more needed in our struggling K through 12 system. This question that we just had on the election, absolutely, I will 100% believe whatever our state certifies, whether President Trump or Vice President Harris wins, you're not going to see any election denial coming from here. But elections are a hot topic right now here in Connecticut. You turn on the TV a couple months ago and you see a registrar down in Bridgeport stuffing an absentee ballot box, who is still walking the streets today. We all saw it. There has been more questions about our elections, rightly so, now than ever before. And Republicans, year after year, propose common sense measures such as voter ID. You have to use an ID to buy cigarettes, to get on a plane, to apply for a mortgage, everything in this state. But we don't require an ID to vote. Yeah. We have these Dropbox facilities, which, yes, we have cameras on them now, but we have someone who completely violated the sanctity of those institutions and is still walking free today. I don't believe that the majority has taken the election security issue seriously enough here in Connecticut. There are plenty of ways that people can subvert the system. Another one is signature verification on absentee ballots. We have a question this year to expand absentee balloting to no excuse. No excuse. You can just fill out an absentee ballot, send it in. There you go. I think that we should at least have some measures in place that you need to prove that you are who you say you are and protect the sanctity of our elections.
All right, thank you, Mr. Canino. Take a quick drink, because you're next. All right. You guys are doing great. You can clap for yourselves. You're doing great as an audience, and I appreciate it. All right, our next question. The Connecticut State Legislature voted to remove the religious exemption for children and their siblings who opt not to be vaccinated, resulting in them not being able to attend school. Do you agree with the removal of the religious exemption for children who are not vaccinated? And if you do not, would you support reinstating the religious exemption? Goes to Mr. Canino.
I would support reinstating that exemption, and I would not have voted for its removal. In 2019, I was in the hearing rooms, working in the legislature, listening to parent after parent of vaccine-injured child come before the legislature and tell the brutal horror stories of how not only is their child debilitated for the rest of their lives from the reaction that they had to some of these vaccines, but when they went to go seek redress and seek, to at least get some money back, they had to go through a vaccine court system, which was just very difficult to navigate. And I feel for these families 100%. It's interesting that the Democratic Party here in Connecticut is all about my body, my choice, until it comes to something that they disagree with. I truly believe that is a personal decision. The state should not be forcing you to put anything into your body. I personally believe in many of the vaccines. I've had all of them. Seem to be doing all right now, but I completely understand people's apprehension towards them and don't believe that we should be automatically making thousands of kids in this state homeschool, putting that burden on families who are already struggling to survive under the tax increases that my opponent has supported multiple years in the past 16 years. I think that that was a misstep, and I would definitely fight to repeal that, the religious exemption bill.
Thank you, Mr. Tonino. Ms. Cook, same question.
So I did take that vote, and it was a hard vote. Again, it's easy to say what you would do, but I think that there's a huge contrast between the my body, my choice conversation and vaccination conversation, and I'm going to explain to you why. I don't believe that any of us up here are doctors or medical professionals, and with that experience or expertise to say what does or doesn't happen. I sat through those hearings, probably about 48 hours worth in total. All of them. And it was a grueling conversation to hear both sides of the story. That is why when we did that, we wrote in the ability for parents to go get an exemption from their doctor. I know that that has not played out the way that it was supposed to, but that was part of our way of saying, we understand where you are, but the reason why it's not always the my body, my choice is because if I don't get vaccinated for measles, mumps, rubella, chickenpox, the list goes on and on. If enough of us don't do that, the diseases that we have had dormant for decades are right now not dormant anymore. We have measles, we have mumps, we have rubella. This is not okay. And so we have a moral and ethical obligation as legislators to take our personal opinions and check it at the door and ensure that we look for the majority, if best possible, all of those people that live in the state of Connecticut. I have a responsibility to ensure that everybody can go to school safely and healthy. And so if I have a child that has cancer, and that child deserves the right to go to school, just like the child that doesn't have cancer. So if that child that has cancer, their vaccine tolerances are now diminishing. So if I choose to not vaccinate my child, and that child gets measles, mumps, rubella, you fill in the blank, what happens? I'm putting that child at risk. And why is it okay for me to say that the child that has a disease that could be losing their life has no rights, but the child who doesn't have a vaccination has more rights? So it's really about weighing all of the odds. And look, it is not an easy decision, and not everybody agrees. But the majority of the taxpayers in the state of Connecticut did agree with that budget, with that bill. I want to go back. We talked about cost and funding and all of these things. My opponent hit on the UConn and the amount of money in the ARPA dollars. By state statute, we have to pay for higher education. So we have an obligation, and legally, we can be pushed back in court if we don't fund that. We have been underfunding them for decades. So now we have the ability to take ARPA dollars and do exactly what we've done with all of our municipalities and school districts and all sorts of other things. Be able to make a dent in what they were behind on. So we're doing that. What that prevents from us increasing the tuition cost for our flagship schools and many of our other schools. What does UConn do? It has put us on the international map for sports. It is one of the top schools to get into. And quite frankly, what ends up happening, students from near and far go to school and they stay here. So I understand that there might be a little bit of pushback and look, I'm not happy about the electric bills, and I know that that conversation is coming. But at the end of the day, it is making decision in the time of which we are in. 2011, you know what, maybe those decisions weren't perfect, but at the end of the day, I was still able to fund education for my municipalities because I know that the mayor in Torrington would have been on the phone saying, you're cutting my education. I know that my nonprofits would have been calling and saying, you're cutting me, you're cutting me, you're cutting me. I know that the reimbursements for Medicare, Medicaid, those would have gone out, off the chart. We need to take care of people, and what that means, it's tough decisions. And that's why we're going back and doing the cuts now, because we weren't able to cut them then. And don't think that because I stand here and make decisions that those decisions don't affect me or my family. We are part of the very middle class folks that each and every one of the folks that I work with are. And what does that do? It means the decisions that I make that affect you affect me too. It's not like I sit on a house on the hill and the decisions do not affect us. So it's about governing for as many people as possible to the best of our ability. Is every decision correct? No. Is every decision perfect? No. But at the time, the decisions are right, and now we're able to go back and do some of the damage control decisions that we've made in the past.
Thank you, Ms. Cook. Next question. Much of the focus is often on attracting and retaining large businesses in Connecticut, but what can be done to help attract, retain, and support small businesses in Connecticut? And this will go to Michelle. Ms. Cook.
Thank you. I think that our foundation is based on our small businesses, and we need to do everything that we can to help them. Streamlining their processes for licensing, permitting, that runs the gamut, right? That's not only a state issue, that's also a city issue as well. We've done small business loans, we've done angel investors, we've cut taxes for our small businesses, and we've done the best, not the best that we can, but we have done things to ensure that those small businesses can be able to reach out to us and say, hey, look, this is where we are and this is what we need to do. Can we do better? We must do better. Because at the end of the day, our big box stores can pack up and leave. But our mom and pops on Main Street, those are the ones that we thrive on. Those are the ones that we ensure that are our infrastructure, our backbone of downtown. But it's something that we all can do too. I know if I look around the room, there's a good amount of us that are Amazon shoppers, online shoppers, and all those other things. What are we doing when we take that convenience? We put our small mom and pops out of business. So let's look in the mirror and say, you know what? Yes, we can say the state can do more. We can say that the municipalities can do more. But let's also take a little bit of that responsibility on ourselves and say, what can I do? Maybe I don't buy from Amazon 3 times this week, and maybe I go to the store. Maybe I find my little mom and pop down the street. Maybe I get my baked goods from somewhere else except for a big box store. There's a cute little cottage kitchen right across the street from the high school that seemed to pop up. Let's stop there and get baked goods from there too. Because quite frankly, it takes a village to do this, and it's just not one entity that's going to be responsible.
Thank you. And Mr. Canino?
I want to go back to something that my opponent mentioned about, tax cuts that were passed, in last year, and some Democrats in the state call them historic. The reason they call them historic tax cuts is because we rarely ever cut taxes here in Connecticut. And while any bit helps, that historic tax cut amounted to about $25 a month for Connecticut residents. I don't think anyone here in this room thinks that is actually enough. When we're talking about attracting businesses here in Connecticut, I think we should take a look to some of the other states that have seen wild growth recently, and other states that are more competitive for business. My opponent is a proud small business owner, and that business is a family business located in the state of Missouri, a state that has much more competitive sales taxes, corporate taxes, and state income taxes than the state of Connecticut. Sometimes it really just is that simple. We need to reduce the tax burden here in Connecticut because it is simply unsustainable. We are not immune here in the state of Connecticut to the laws of supply and demand. If you place cost after cost after cost on our businesses, regulation after regulation after regulation, they're going to decide to move. And in the C-suites of businesses, corporate businesses, and for small businesses who are thinking, where am I going to locate? Connecticut's just not on the map. And I think any small business owner in the audience here can understand that, because, our labor committee here in Connecticut puts some radical bills forward every single year. I mentioned one about the paid sick leave bill, but there was also a slush fund for the comptroller that was passed this year that would have provided $3 million for striking workers to help them with their costs while they're striking, putting state government's thumb on the scale and tipping it in the favor of one side in a labor negotiation. My opponent supported that bill. And I think that money, that bill was so bad that even Governor Lamont vetoed it. I think that money could definitely be spent better elsewhere, and it is policies like those that end up making employers, big and small, say, you know what, I don't think I want to set up shop in Connecticut. But, of course, small businesses, when we cut taxes, they will be able to thrive here, they will be able to sell more, they will be able to operate. In the past 5 years, what we have seen is 27 states have cut a major tax. That's your corporate tax, your sales tax, your state income tax. And those 27 states, on average, saw more revenue growth in their state. Think about that. They cut taxes and they saw their revenue grow. Now, why is that? Well, when you cut taxes and make your state more affordable, people move there. People come to your state, you become more competitive. So that's why I go back again. We're not immune to the laws of supply and demand here in Connecticut. We make it more affordable, we will reap the benefits for years and years to come. But, Torrington had seen firsthand that big business coming in actually does help too. This town was thriving when the Torrington company was here. Most of my family worked there growing up. And if we provide incentives for, if we provide more brownfield dollars, if we make it the calculus better for them to decide to come here to Connecticut, the entire community will thrive. My opponent will say that she's made some very hard decisions and voted no on a lot of these labor proposals, but she's a deputy speaker for the Connecticut State House. She's in the leadership of the Democratic Party. You can't go here and claim that you are the seasoned veteran, that you are the legislator that's going to get things done because you've been here and you're in a leadership position, and you're going to fix Connecticut's problems, but also say that you are helpless when it comes to the whims of the radical members of your party who put bill after bill forward that just really, really hurts businesses. So again, we have great strides to do to make this state more affordable. I tell you, I will be a fierce advocate, and I will not only take symbolic no votes on these issues. I'm not just gonna, vote no and then go hide on this. No, I will do what legislators do when they actually oppose bills. I will hold forums in the district, encourage grassroots efforts to come to the Capitol and voice how these policies are gonna hurt them. I will go against my party if that is what required and really make the case loud and proud why we shouldn't do this. Unfortunately, too often my opponent does not do that.
Thank you, Mr. Camino. You've been good so far.
No clapping.
Thank you, I appreciate it. And again, we have some questions coming up that might be a little bit emotional for some of you, but again, I ask you to please don't clap or respond in any way. You've been a really good silent audience, just stay that way. All right, the next question. Should a person who is born a male be allowed to compete in women's sports in Connecticut? That goes to you, Mr. Camino.
Absolutely and emphatically no. The safety of our women and girls in our schools is a paramount concern to me. And allowing a physical male to participate in women's sports not only threatens their safety, but threatens their success in those sports that they work so hard to compete in. Our CIAC, for any of you students out here who used to play sports here at Torrington Country School, Torrington High School like I did, that the CIAC is the governing body for our athletics here in Connecticut. And they currently allow men to participate in women's sports. It is frightening, frankly, and the fact that my opponent hasn't addressed this issue is definitely very concerning. The second they put that policy in place, out of it all over it, screaming from rooftops, how can we do this to our poor girls? How can we possibly subject them to compete against biological men with testosterone who are much stronger than them? It is simply not fair, and it is a travesty that this has gone on. So I promise you, your state legislator, I will fight this issue tooth and nail.
Thank you, Mr. Camino. Questions, Ms. Cook?
That's kind of funny of an answer because we haven't had the opportunity to vote on this. And at the end of the day, contrary to what Mike believed, I was a college athlete. My children were college athletes. We were all high school athletes. So I understand both sides of this conversation. Do I believe that women should be put in a position of being hurt? Absolutely not. I do not believe that at all. And I don't believe that that is something that I would support if I was ever asked in the State House. I believe the governing body, the NCAA, the CIAC, and the Olympic Committee, those are our governing bodies on sports. That is not something that the state of Connecticut has ever gotten into, and that is why it has always fallen on the CIAC, the NCAA, and the Olympic Board. So if we're talking about safety and health, if a woman or a young woman chooses to play a male sport, that is their choice and they know what they're getting into. If a male decides to play a female sport, I do believe we have got to put precautions and safety measures in place. I'm not saying that that should be okay, but I do want to make it very clear. It is not that I have not taken a position. It is not the state has not taken a position because it does not fall under our governing body. I'm going to go back. It's very easy for my opponent to say, I'm in leadership. I should make these decisions. Well, if my opponent understood the breakdown of state government, then he would understand what the body of the legislature does and the leadership role and what they do. So you have a speaker, you have a majority leader, you have a minority leader, then you have their deputies. You don't walk in as a freshman legislator in any form of leadership. You have to earn that role. And it's taken me several years to get there. Second, as a speaker and the majority leader, they are the ones that sit at the negotiating table with the governor, along with the minority leader and the Senate ranking to make those governing decisions when it talks about budgeting and what's being brought to the floor. Quite frankly, that's the majority leader. He runs the floor. The speaker, we run the debate. So I'm proud to be a deputy speaker pro tem. I don't think that there's ever been a deputy speaker pro tem from the 65th district of the state of Connecticut. I wear that badge with honor. Does it come with tough decisions? It does. But it doesn't come with the responsibilities of which somebody's trying to point at me to say that my leadership role is what should make me do one or the other. I fall in line with the roles of which I'm responsible for. I don't go outside of those roles. Do I have good conversations? I absolutely do. Do I have a phone number for the governor? I do, and the speaker, and the minority leader, and the Senate president in writing. But I also know to respect those positions and respect my position as well. Because at the end of the day, the one thing that you have in that building is your word. And if you lose that and the respect, you've lost everything. And so for me, I'm proud of all of those things and don't run from any of it. And if people have questions about my voting record, everything that we do is public. And you can see each and everything. And what I encourage people to do, go look, go ask. I don't want to go back. You quote one line, maybe even 4 words out of an article from 2011. I'm glad you have time for that. Because for me, I don't remember what I said in 2011, but I promise there was probably something more to that than just a little phrase that you quoted. But I do know this. In 2011, we were trying to put the pieces back together on a national recession. I know that's what I was doing. I don't know what you were doing, but we were making some hard decisions. And were they right? Again, I say, they weren't perfect, but we had to figure out a way to ensure that our aid to towns did not get cut. We had to ensure that our aid to education did not get cut. We had to ensure that our seniors were taken care of, healthcare facilities were taken care of, and our veterans. So again, we can keep going back to it, but I think that we've kind of beat that dead horse, and I'd like to talk about something.
Thank you, Ms. Cook.
Men with females.
Excuse me.
Get them out.
This is your last warning. Everyone in the audience needs to be respectful and quiet. You will be escorted out if I have to interrupt this again, sir. Next question is going to Ms. Cook first. The right to an abortion has been codified in Connecticut state law since 1990. The U.S. Supreme Court's decision to end the federal constitutional protection of abortion did not impact abortion rights in Connecticut. Would you support a Connecticut constitutional amendment to guarantee a woman's right to an abortion and reproductive choice?
It's not something that I think that we should be voting on. I will answer the question. But I think that we have to take a long look at who we are as society. And I think we need to put ourselves in other people's shoes that have had to make some really tough choices. What I think, I don't think that people should go to jail because they make a healthcare decision to save their life over an unborn child. What I think is the people that are spreading the false information about after-birth abortions is just so not true, because quite frankly, that would be called murder. What I think is that if you have a 10, 11, or 12-year-old girl that has been raped or molested, they shouldn't be forced to carry that child. What I do believe is that's a family's decision. I don't believe that that's my decision. I am not God. I am not judge, and I am not jury. I used to work in a home for unwed pregnant teenagers before I moved to Connecticut. Those children, when I mean children, my youngest girl was 14. I won't say her name. She was of Asian descent, pregnant with an interracial child. And she was as pregnant with a belly as she was tall. Her parents didn't believe in abortion, so they shipped her away because she couldn't stay in her house because she was a disgrace to the family. She was forced to carry that child. She was forced to deliver that child. Then her parents forced her to give the child away. To this day, she still has struggles. I can't imagine what she goes through mentally or physically. What I do know is that wasn't my place to tell her what she needed to do. That was her family's decision. What I do know is that I'm a woman and the only one in this debate. And I don't want somebody to tell me what I can do with my body. I don't want a doctor to tell me that if I have to have an abortion for medical reasons, that anybody that helps with that process will go to jail. What I want for my children, my daughters, my granddaughters, is to be able to make the healthcare decisions for themselves. So if that means that we have to legislate in the State House that a woman has control over her body, then I'm willing to do that. Do I personally support the right for somebody to have an abortion? It's not my choice. It's nobody's choice but that person's. I might not have one, but what I do know, it's not my right to tell somebody that they can't. And what I do know is if we're going to talk about healthcare, we're going to talk about women's rights, we also need to talk about what's equal on the other side. Because in the world that I live in the world we live in, it's constantly been a hit on women's rights and nobody else.
Thank you, Ms. Cook. We have just a few more minutes for Ms. Cook, and Mr. Canino, you may go ahead and answer the same question.
Yeah, I will make no two ways about it. You know, I'm a church-going Catholic. Personally, I am pro-life, but I do not believe at all of imposing my morality on somebody else. Here in the state of Connecticut, we have very strong abortion laws here that I have absolutely zero intention of changing, and I would not vote on a bill that would weaken those. As far as a constitutional amendment, you know, we already have Roe v. Wade codified into law here in Connecticut, and I have absolutely no intentions of making that change. But, you know, Democrats would like to politicize this issue here in Connecticut, where it's really not on the ballot. There's no big drive from our Republican Party here in Connecticut to change it, and if there was, I would not be a part of that. But what I hear when I go door to door, as I have to over 5,000 doors here in Torrington, what I hear is not that issue. It is, how am I going to pay my electric bill? How am I going to pay for my food, for my car, for my gas, all these different things. It's affordability across the board. And unfortunately, the majority here, their record is not anywhere near, even close to perfect on those. I want to go back to a couple of things that my opponent mentioned. At first, on the transgender athletes issue, Last I checked, the CIAC is subject to the same, regulations here in Connecticut that everybody else is. It is totally within the purview of the state legislature to put a bill forward that could actually, change the system there and protect our women and girls from men in their sports. And my opponent is right. She hasn't taken a vote on this issue yet. But if it was an important issue to you, you could propose legislation. You could do something to try and tackle that issue. And then the line about being a deputy speaker. I'm no two ways about it. I'm not going to try and place every single thing that the state of Connecticut has done wrong on my opponent. She has served us here in Torrington for 16 years. I think you can definitely tell that she cares about her community. But I believe that across the board, it is time for change. And that majority that she is a part of, it needs to go. It's out of touch. It is not concerned, from my point of view, from the point of view of many of the people in this audience, with the bottom lines of your average resident here. They might say they are, but their voting record is clearly to the opposite of that. And just one thing, my opponent said, "Where were you in 2011?" I was 14 years old right in this auditorium. I'm sorry, I couldn't have done more at that time. But again, the issues that are driving voters to the polls here in Connecticut of affordability, of energy, those are the ones that I'm chiefly concerned with. And talk about energy affordability. When my opponent, had the opportunity to join the call for a special session to reallocate some money that could have been used to offset these cost increases on our residents, I didn't hear from her. Did you? I wrote a letter. It is really unfortunate, and I think that priorities definitely need to be aligned, and that is why we should vote these people out and install Republicans who are actually going to make a difference for your wallet.
Thank you, Mr. Canino. This next question will start with you. What are your policies regarding the state's financial responsibilities to use taxpayer money to support undocumented immigrants, such as Husky Health, housing, financial aid for college students, and providing them with driver's licenses? And do you support Connecticut being a sanctuary state?
I'm glad you asked this question. No, I do not believe in Connecticut being a sanctuary state, but unfortunately, because of the policies that we have on the books, we have become one. We voted to expand the Trust Act here in 2019, which my opponent voted for, which increasingly makes it more difficult for our police to work with immigration customs enforcement and DHS. The healthcare for illegal immigrants is a tough issue. It is really disturbing to see that we have homeless veterans in our communities, that we have people really struggling who could use some extra dollars from the state, but meanwhile we are spending tens and tens of millions, it could be hundreds of millions, over a long period of time on illegal immigrant healthcare here in Connecticut. Again, budgeting is about priorities. We have people here who are struggling, and of course, we would love to be able to take care of the world's poor. But when we're barely able to take care of ourselves, it just seems very misguided to go ahead and basically, give all this money to people who aren't citizens, whose first act in this country was to break our laws, and in many cases are not taxpayers. Unfortunately, we now have expanded it to, you can get these benefits up to the age of 15, and then receive those benefits until 19 years old. There are some radical Democrats here that want to expand them to 25. There are some even that want to expand them to all illegal immigrants. We can't afford that. Budgeting is about priorities. Let's take that money and invest it in our citizens. That expansion to 15 and 19 in the 2023, I believe was the implementer. My opponent supported that. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Cadino. So, Ms. Cook, we have 1 minute and 13 seconds left. I'm going to ask our timers to let us know when we get to 30 seconds, and then also to announce time as loudly as you can so that we can hear it. You're free to continue to answer this question during your 2-minute closing statement, and the next question that I'm going to be asking Mr. Cadino. So the question goes to you. Would you like me to repeat it or no? Okay.
I completely agree that our Connecticut residents and our US citizens should come first. First and foremost. I want to talk about a couple of things that my opponent is quick to point. The Husky for All. I have voted no on that in committee each and every time it has come up. We can't afford it, nor should we do it. But he's quick to point out that the one vote that was taken was tucked into a budget bill that you actually quoted on your mailer. That, by the way, was a bipartisan budget bill in 2023, and both of our Senate Republicans voted for as well. So if we're gonna point fingers, let's point fingers at all of us, not just one of us. We have healthcare and we have a crisis. And if we have people who do not go to the hospital with insurance, then that falls on the backs of our taxpayers. And what does that mean? It's millions upon millions upon millions of dollars out of our pocket. There's gotta be a better way to fix it. I don't think that starting with Husky for All is the answer. And again, I have voted no for it in committee each and every time. 97% of the pieces of legislation that we do in the State House are bipartisan, in one way, shape, or form. They might not be unanimous, but they are bipartisan. We work very well together. And there are a handful of things that we don't agree on. My time is up, so I will respect that.
All right, time is up for Ms. Cook, so this question will be going to Mr. Canino, and then we will move to the 2-minute closing remarks. So your question is, what are your beliefs on the issue of gun control and the Second Amendment?
Before I get into the Second Amendment question, I just want to mention a couple of things. Yes, that provision was tucked into a very large budget bill, because the way we do budgets here in Connecticut is wrong. You know, we have bills that are hundreds of pages long that are passed, that are, you know, put out for public consumption, and sometimes mere hours before they're voted on, before, you know, most of the public has the chance to read them. And it's really unfortunate we slip all sorts of things in there, but I'm sorry, you know, that's a major thing in that bill that would have at least, you know, caused some concern with me, and I would have voted against that budget because of that provision. You know, yes, you say that Republicans supported that budget. We're not talking about other Republicans right now. We're talking about Joe Canino and Representative Cook, and I tell you that Joe Canino would not have supported funding that illegal immigrant health care. You know, we talk a lot about health insurance, about how unaffordable it is here in Connecticut, and Republicans year after year, you know, come up with some great ideas to reduce insurance that aren't just simply involving more government, because often we see here in the state that when Democrats see a problem, they think, how can I get the government involved in this? Republicans actually had some you know, proposals that look at the free market and look at expanding individual purchasing power, and I'll go to association health plans. Republicans had a proposal to allow businesses, nonprofits, individuals to pool their purchasing power together and get a better rate on their health insurance. That's something I would have supported. That is something that would have gone through the insurance committee this year, but unfortunately, due to some Democratic infighting, no bills were passed out of the insurance committee, so that is unfortunate. Another thing that we can do is reinsurance. You know, for small state investment, we can provide a reinsurance program that will save, you know, the average family around $7,000 per month on their premiums. Wouldn't it be nice? So, you know, Republicans here in the state of Connecticut, we don't just say no to everything. We have plans, put us in office, and we will fix this state. On the Second Amendment, I myself am a concealed carry permit holder. I have been for a couple years now. I have, you know, a handful of firearms myself, and I completely believe that, you know, the Second Amendment means shall not be infringed. The right to defend yourself is one of the God-given rights that we take, you know, so seriously here in the Republican Party, and frankly, I think Connecticut has gone way too far. They have legislated the wrong thing. They have gone way too hard on assault weapons, which is a made-up term, when, you know, most of the vast majority of gun homicides are committed by handguns in our major cities that, yet again, Democrats have continued to run into the ground. We didn't get a chance tonight to talk about crime policy, but I'll brush up on it quick because it goes hand in hand with Second Amendment. Criminals are becoming more and more brazen every day. They're realizing that they can go 4, 5, 6, 7 times in some cases in front of a judge without seeing the inside of a jail cell. You know, we have made strides, we have put some bills forward, but it just hasn't been enough. I don't need to recite a bunch of crime statistics to tell you that, you know, motor vehicle crimes are up, the property crimes are up, and people feel less safe. They don't feel like the state of Connecticut truly has their back. We have so much more to do in this state when it comes to public safety, but in the meantime, I do believe that we should be protecting individuals' rights to defend themselves when they have proven that they have, you know, can have the responsibility to. So, you know, we have red flag laws, we have background check laws, you know, very much supportive of those common sense safety measures. But I really think we have gone way too far as a state. I feel like we should be encouraging higher gun ownership for rational, safe, sane individuals, because at the end of the day, we need safer communities.
Thank you, Mr. Canino. That was the last question we're going to take, and now we're going to move to the 2-minute closing remarks. We're going to be starting with Mr. Canino because he drew the letter A first, so he will start. And I just want to caution you, you still can't clap, and you still can't make any noise, not yet. So I will let you know, this is like Simon Says, you're going to have to wait, and when I say now you can clap, then you can clap. That's how we play this. So on that, go ahead, Mr. Canino. Thank you.
Again, I just want to thank everybody for coming out here tonight for a productive discussion of the issues. You know, we have a clear choice this November. Are we going to continue to elect the same people over and over again? The same Democrat majority that has gotten us in the pickle that we're in, that has made it less affordable here in Connecticut, that has made businesses less likely to start here and to come here? Or are we going to vote for change? Are we going to vote for a new, fresh perspective that's going to say no to the radical proposals that we've seen year after year in this state? You know, I think we need to send a clear message to the Democratic majority in Hartford that none of you should be comfortable in your seats. You know, Connecticut is a blue state, but we have serious work to do here as Republicans, and we will fight like hell to get our state back, because the direction that we're going on now, it's unaffordable. You know, every resident here can see it. We're seeing people move out of our state. We're losing jobs like crazy. We're not keeping up with national job trends. And even if we had zero unemployment in this state, we would still have unfilled jobs because we are so down on our population right now. Again, it is a clear choice. You know, do we do the same things and expect different results? Or do we make a change, get a fresh perspective, and make the investments that Connecticut needs? Thank you, everybody, for coming out tonight, and God bless America.
Thank you, Mr. Canino. And I pass this to Ms. Cook, your 2 minutes.
Thank you. First on the Second Amendment. No, I believe we have a Second Amendment, and that Second Amendment should stay. I do believe, though, that we needed to make sure that guns were in the hands of the people that should have them and not the people that shouldn't. So yes, did we stiffen our gun policies? Yes, we did. And I will tell you that after I sat in the room with every family member of a parent that lost a child in Sandy Hook, you figure out a way to do something about that. Because looking at those families in the eye, knowing that they will never see their children again or their loved one again is not something I wish upon anybody. Again, tough decisions. I voted no on the police accountability bill. I was one of 4 Democrats that voted no. I got the endorsement from our police unions because for me, they know that I support them and I back them. We might have an increase in crime in your world, but on the numbers, our crime is down. We do have a problem in our judicial world, and I know that the judges are going to call me tomorrow. But look, at the end of the day, they have to figure out a way on how they hold folks accountable that are in their courtrooms. Because our police officers can arrest them, but they need to be held accountable in the courtroom as well. The other issue that we need to look at when we talk about crime and accountability, we need to fully staff our police officers. Because at the end of the day, if we do not have a fully staffed police force, then we are not going to have a safe community. That starts here at home. That starts right here in our community. That cannot be pointed a finger at the state of Connecticut. So as we close, I also want to note too that my opponent talked about the pooling bill. That's been around since 2008. So people have been able to pool their insurance. In closing, I want to thank you all for being here. I want to thank you all for being right here. because this might be the last time you all have the opportunity to be in the Little Theater because we're building a beautiful facility next door. I'm honored to be able to support you. I'm honored to be able to bring that money back to Torrington, and I'm honored to be your state representative. Thank you again for the privilege.
Thank you, Ms. Cook. Audience, first of all, I really want to thank you, for coming here and taking time out of your busy lives to listen to our candidates. And you've been an amazingly respectful and attentive audience. You've been fantastic. So the first round of applause is for you, and you deserve it. I also want to thank Constance, Denise, Marie, and Erin for being our timekeepers. We could not do this without you. And last but not least, a huge thank you, of course, to Ms. Michelle Cook and Mr. Joe Canino for speaking with us tonight and helping us to get to know you better. We appreciate you both for doing this difficult work of running for office very, very much. The voting public now has more information, which is why we're all here tonight. So now you can
Go,
make
Joe!
Mouse.
Settle
If
down.
you have further questions for the candidates, please visit the tables in the lobby and they will stay and answer any questions you may have. And if you'd like some information about the League of Women Voters, we also have some literature for you outside and members who can answer your questions. And with that, good night and safe travels home. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.